All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to another great session with the presidential candidate of the fictional Common Sense People's Party. Now, I have said it repeatedly on this channel that most Nigerians voted against the APC, but the few who still supported them are the ones who gave them the temerity to connive with INEC and judiciary and do what they did. Because the power of the people is in their unity. And when we allow meaningless things like ethnicity to divide us, we completely lose our power, and the consequences are pain, short change, and total domination of the Commonwealth by a select few. And this is true with the recent happenings in Nigeria. After 8 years of suffering under Buhari, it became apparent that the APC was a purposeless party. Buhari publicly went back on all his campaign promises, and his spokesman called Nigerians unprintable names for daring to even remind him that he made promises. Now, that same APC returned in 2023 with a candidate who gave Buhari his full support, even amidst enormous failure. It was a no-brainer. Everyone was supposed to vote against them, but some people threw logic out of the window and said ethnicity was all that mattered. Fast forward to this period, one of such persons now is in an interview and is criticizing TINUBU bitterly, especially after seeing the 2023 supplementary budget. He said it was disappointing and that he's angry. And not he alone, he also mentioned that his uncle, who is a fanatical TINUBU supporter, gave up after seeing the request for a yacht. But before I show you that video, let me quickly show you what this renowned economist said as Nigeria is set to take another very heavy loan. Listen to the economist.
Raising debt to finance. And I think we need to start rethinking our energy for collection of debt, especially when we collect debt and the impact of debt on the economy. You see, this is what economy says about debt. And it's important. You know, we are at the very beginning of this administration. There are three key things that economists are bothered about, or economists bothered about, when it comes to issue of debt. First, what is debt to GDP? The debt to GDP in Nigeria is really very, very accommodating. We have less than 50%. About 40% or less is what we have at debt to GDP. But in economics, it is not sufficient condition. It is a necessary condition. It is not the sufficient condition. The second condition will be, what is our revenue component to debt service, which is what I just mentioned. When we need to spend more than half of our revenue, more than 60% of our revenue to service debt, then it no longer makes sense. Right. What economists say we should stay with is 1/3. The third, but the most important, in the last 8 years, what is the impact of debt? What percentage has debt increased, and what percentage has the overall economy, the impact of debt measurable has increased? The economy has only increased by 2 to 3%. Meanwhile, our debt collection has increased on the average, I'm talking per annum, on the average, by over 20%. The implication is that in spite of this humongous amount that we have collected as debt, the impact is not getting directly into our economy and into our country.
All right, now let's look at...
You heard him. We are borrowing heavily, yet the impact is not being felt on the economy. That is why Peter Obi said borrowing is not the problem, but borrowing to consume is. We are borrowing to fund a budget where 13.5 billion was allocated for renovation of 2 official residences. We are borrowing to finance a budget where 1.5 billion will be used to renovate Office of First Lady, and 2.9 billion will be used to purchase SUVs. And this is why when the other monies in the budget are disbursed to agencies and parastatals, they embezzle the money because they see it as their own share of the national cake. What a pathetic situation. Now, let us see the interview of this man from the Southwest criticizing TINUBU's supplementary budget, especially his request for a yacht. See the interview.
If you look at when 2.1 trillion was submitted as appropriation supplementary budget, it was approved. Now we are hearing a borrowing plan of $7.8 billion and 100 million euros. Well, one would have thought that all these monies, all these appropriations will go towards the development of infrastructure in the country critical infrastructure in the country, fighting insecurity, fighting hunger, fighting unemployment, even fighting disunity in the country. But what do you see? Okay, having approved all this, now we are hearing 1.5 billion naira is to be used to purchase cars for the office of the First Lady. 4 billion naira is to be used to refurbish Dodan Barracks. To what extent? For what? Now, if it's meant for the president, when he goes to Lagos, he has houses in Lagos where he can sleep. Lagos State government alone has probably more than 20 VIP guest houses around Lagos. We don't need to go and spend 4 billion naira on the Dodan Barracks that has been abandoned for how many years? Now we are hearing 4 billion naira to be used to renovate the office, the house of the president inside Aso Rock, and 3 billion will go into refurbishing the house of the vice president. I think it's egregiously insensitive, it is obscene, and it is very, very condemnable. It is not, because you see, we cannot have a country. You see, there's a Yoruba proverb that says that a debtor does not eat egg. No, that a debtor does not eat egg. You know, so if we say our economy is under this type of burden, and another Yoruba proverb says that it is only a fool who borrows money to go and bury a prostitute.
Ouch.
You understand?
That's
because
quite, heavy.
And that is the kind of things we are seeing now. Just last year, the National Bureau of Statistics says 133 million Nigerians are multi-dimensionally poor. Just last year. But I can bet you that it has increased probably over 150 million. I think the question we should ask ourselves is that what happened to the cars that Buhari used? What happened to where former president was living? You see the first lady with a convoy going. I don't see any cars that are old in that convoy. Why would we want to, vote 1.5 billion naira to buy a new set of cars? I think there should be a law in this country. There should be a law that says that government officials cannot change their cars until after 10 years. We need to, it's not as if people should not function in their offices. They need equipment to function, they need money to function, they need all these things to function. But the thing is that you need to make that to be correspondent to the economic situation in the country. You cannot have 133 million multidimensionally poor people and you now defend a 4 billion naira to refurbish where one person will be living, 5.5 billion naira to go and buy presidential yacht. The thing is start presidential yacht. Now you are saying it's not meant for the president. Then why did you put presidential? That's the question they should ask. You see, look, there are people you can support. There are even supporters of the president are now beginning to doubt his sincerity about reforming this country. I have an uncle, Uncle Mufta, who is fanatically committed to supporting the president during this election. Immediately this news came out, my uncle, has been, for the first time since I know him, he has been so furious. Said, no, I'm out of this.
You heard him. He said his uncle, who used to be a fanatical supporter of TINUBU, finally decided he was done after hearing and seeing the items on the supplementary budget, particularly the demand for a yacht. But on the contrary, if I knew this man's uncle, I would be very furious with the uncle. Why? Because he has not demonstrated wisdom as an elderly man. As an elderly man, his uncle ought to be wise enough to know that a leopard can never change its spots. If young Nigerians knew that nothing good could come out of APC, how can an elderly man not know? He most likely knew, but he was more interested in loyalty to his ethnic group and massaging his hatred for Peter Obi. So he has no moral right to complain now. Most people who voted the APC knew exactly the kind of people they were voting, so nobody should pretend now. And at the risk of sounding pessimistic, this is just the beginning. You may have heard that Naira appreciated against the dollar. It has now moved from $1 to 1,300 Naira, down to $1 to 1,100 Naira. But how did that happen? Federal government took a loan and backed up the Naira with it. Everyone knows this is not a sustainable economic move. The dollar will rise against the Naira sooner than expected. And when it does, the fall of the Naira will be worse than it was a few weeks ago. Only production, exportation, and good name can make the Naira strong. Unfortunately, the only man who promised all these is not there just yet. Anyway, make I leave am here. Make I still enter town. Make I go get some ogbonge political news wey una go like. Why? Because of una. Now I dey here. So, don't go away. Don't go away.